Okay, so in this video, I want to talk to you about how, if you are in a relationship with a borderline, that you are not a real person to them, that they do not see you. You don't really exist. It's extremely important that you understand that, because if you don't, then it will be so confusing and so painful for you. Um, and you may have already experienced it. So if you feel as though you don't exist, it's because you truly don't. In their mind, you do not exist. That's why they can go from loving you to hating you, and they have zero remorse. They have no remorse for the pain that they're causing you. It's because they don't empathize with you. The moment that you're an evil person, you stop truly existing at all. The only existence that you have for them is how you make them feel. It's purely, no matter how unconditionally loving you may feel that they are during their idealization phase, uh, they don't really see you. And the idealization is not the kind of idealization that you're having of them. Even though you're a codependent, you are also projecting onto them. So you're not without blame here. Because a normal person will see that a borderline is not operating on all cylinders. They'll see it very quickly. So if you don't, it means that you have ignored the warning signs and you are only going after them fixing something within you. But you are still more mature in your understanding, and you have different assumptions about humans and their existence than they do. They are only operating literally from the viewpoint of an infant, and an infant, is only operating from their needs. They are nothing but need, and so whatever affection that they give is it's not that it's false, but it's coming from a purely completely infantile perspective, which means that it is focused on them getting their needs met. The moment that you are perceived as somebody who will not meet their needs, then like an infant, they cry. Infants go from being happy or being to crying. It's either life or death for them, and that's the real truth. Infants, need to survive, and their survival mechanism of crying and screaming and having tantrums is to get your attention, because if they don't, there's a real chance they could die. So this is where they're coming from with you. They don't see you as a real person because they don't have the capacity to see you as a real person. And so the important part about that is that they're infants on an emotional and psychological level, and I guess to some degree on a mental level. In fact, a lot of degrees on a mental level. But they live within the intellect and the body of an adult. So they have all the sexual desires of an adult, and they have the intellectual capacity. Sometimes they're brilliant on an intellectual level of an adult. So it's very confusing. But you need to understand they don't see you. When you are giving love to them, like when you're loving them back, they're soaking it all up and they're experiencing it and enjoying it. And so you see this fully grown human on the other end. You can tell that they are honest, that they don't have any guile. Infants don't have the ability to be deceptive. They can't plan out strategies of how to deceive you. So in the moment, it's very real, and so that's part of it. The innocence, the innocent reaction and pleasure that they get from having a loving exchange with you is really wonderful and refreshing, and it makes you think even more that they're even that more trustable. Look at how innocent and pure this person is. And so you can idealize them, and I did, and I would talk about how perfect and amazing she was, but what I was really doing is I was responding. Of course, this was my projection as well. I was projecting onto my childhood needs within her, but you're seeing this beautifully pure, perfect individual just loving you without any boundaries, without any reservation, and it's so incredibly wonderful. And you think, an adult who can be this childlike and beautiful and loving is just, well, I'm in heaven. Combine that with the perfect sex, who doesn't want that? Except for the fact that they really are just an infant. So, like an infant, an infant doesn't spend any time thinking about, how does my continuous crying and temper tantrums, how does that affect you? And how have I inconvenienced you? Because it's the job of the parent, especially the mother, to have no life. That your entire life is devoted to taking care of the immediate and constant need of your infant or your toddler. So, they are coming from that perspective. There's no part of them that is saying, I'm too needy. I'm destroying this person's life right now. I'm making a scene in the restaurant. None of those things happen because they're an infant. So, if you knew that, like, especially after we broke up, but, towards the end, like, if I was out in public and I would see a parent with a toddler or an infant and the toddler would be having a temper tantrum, I would imagine, trying to have a romantic relationship with that 2-year-old. And then it would just go, well, of course, that's not going to work. And what ends up happening is I might be, personally, annoyed by the screaming, but I don't have any horrible feelings. But I also have no need to try and fix them so they can be an adult. It's like, oh, they're a little kid. So, romantically, you have to see that so you can go, oh, this is never going to work. I can't, and so you have to bring that when they're idealizing you and loving you. Imagine them imagine them with the same adult clothes on. Imagine just shrinking them down to a 2-year-old, walking around in high-heeled shoes and lipstick, and I love you and I'm going to marry you. That's what's happening. You can't take it seriously. It means nothing. You can't depend on them. They're not going to remember this moment, 10 seconds from now. You can't, you won't take it, badly when they trip or when you don't pay attention to them, they start crying and having a temper tantrum. You don't get hurt. That's what infants and toddlers do. But ironically, if you see them as an adult and you have expectations to meet your adult needs of love, then it will hurt you so badly because you will see that they honestly didn't care. Their love for you is so superficial and so temporary and so infantile that they can't. So the pain that you're feeling from them hurting you is irrational on your part. It's very real, but it's because you have the assumption you're with an adult. And if an mature adult did those things that this person has just done, it would be incredibly cruel and mean. And if they're angry, and they are the angry kind, then it's really horrible because you have this full-grown adult unleashing with all of their adult, brilliant intellectuality words and accusations that are coming at you that are just tearing you to pieces. Whereas if, it was just a little 2-year-old screaming, I hate you, you're horrible, you're mean, you would go, I know, all right, let's take you to bed, okay, maybe we need a timeout. You wouldn't take it personally. So hopefully you can do that. It's easier said than done, but for me, when it finally dawned on me was the last time that I saw her. I went to get some closure, which again is a waste of time. You won't get closure. Because I was just so hurt because we had gone from my experience of the most loving, most intimate, most connected, most beautiful experience of her taking care of me in my need and creating plans and a life and all that, to the next day of her telling me that I was unsafe and that I was out to destroy her and that she couldn't have anything more to do with me and that I was an evil person. It hurt me so badly. It's the most pain I've ever experienced in my life, literally, of the most deepest betrayal and hurt ever in my life. If you're borderline, you have to understand that's the effect you have on people. That you really need to get some help. Well, if you want to have relationships and not harm people, you need to get some help. And so, I had to get closure because it was so painful and so confusing. And I went there specifically to find out and to ask her some questions so that I could gauge, did she really love me, or was this all just in my head? And I won't get into, maybe I'll share the full experience of that, but bottom line is that I went there, to get closure and to honestly step back and see who was this person and not try and get my needs met, but just to ask enough questions to see what it was. And thankfully, I saw. There were other things that happened that I caught her in one of her phases during the day where she hadn't put on her persona, and I caught her in like her actual essence. And then the things that she said helped me to realize that the pain I had been experiencing had been purely my projection because I thought she was an actual fully formed adult, and she wasn't. And that I could see that what was going on is that there was just an infant on the other end of this, and that I didn't really exist. And that's the thing you need to understand. You don't really exist. And so you can't take it personally.